Hola todos! What we're going to do today is we're going to have a little look at what the writing element of your National 5 exam looks like in Spanish. So let's get started. When you open up your exam on the day, what you'll find in the writing element of your National 5 paper is a job advert. Now, what you need to do is you need to respond to that job advert in Spanish between 120 to 150 words. Now don't worry, we'll break it down for you today to make that as simple as possible. So the first thing you'll need to do when you open up your exam paper on the day is to look at your job advert and first of all find out what job is it you're applying for. Is it a cashier, cajero, cajera? Is it a waiter, camarero, or a waitress, camarera? And you can find these hopefully by using your knowledge of jobs to pick out what the job is. However, if you can't figure out what the job is, please don't worry because you will have access to a dictionary to help you find out what the translation is so you know which job you're applying for. Okay, so you've found which job you're applying for, now you need to write your job application letter. Bear in mind your job application letter needs to be written in Spanish, but it only needs to be between 120 to 150 words. Now that might sound like a lot, don't worry, we'll break it down for you today, like I say, and we'll make it as easy as possible. So, let's get started with how we start off our job application. Now, those 120 to 150 words will be broken into 6 different bullet points that you need to address. The first 4 are really easy, and the reason for that is because they come up every single year. They're what are known as our predictable bullet points. So they appear every single year and they never change. So the SQA are being really kind to us here. That means this is going to be one of the easiest exams you will ever go into because you already know 4 out of the 6 of the questions that you're going to be asked to address. Now, the other 2 are slightly more challenging. They're what are known as our unpredictable bullet points. These change year after year. However, they do tend to hit the same sorts of topics, and so we'll prepare you in another video about how to address these unpredictable bullet points. Let's just start today. We'll keep it simple and look at our predictable bullet points. Now, just like any letter in English or in Spanish or whatever language, you want to introduce yourself and you want to start it off with an introductory phrase. For example, dear sir, dear madam, dear whoever is reading this. The reason that I'm writing to you is to express my will to apply for X. Now that sounds quite complicated in English. We can keep it really simple in Spanish, and I'm going to teach you how to do that just now. So let's start off with addressing who you're going to be talking to. You might start off your letter by saying something along the lines of Muy estimados señores, dear sir or madam, or to whoever it might concern. And then you might go in to express why you're writing your letter. So you might say, quiero presentarles mi candidatura para solicitar el puesto de, and then your job. Now this blank where I've said your job, that's where you would put in the job title that you've just picked out. For example, cajero or cajera or camarero or camarera, whatever it is. So you're saying, I'm writing to you because I want to apply for X and the name of the job. Now your introductory phrase doesn't get you any points from SQA. However, what it does do is it sets you off on a brilliant start for your job application letter and it really impresses your examiner. So I would encourage you to include it in your writing. Right, let's get started with our 4 predictable bullet points. Bullet point number 1, your name, your age, and where you live. Your personal details. This is the easiest bullet point and one that you'll probably be able to do in Spanish without even having to look up any extra vocabulary in your dictionary. So how do we do it? Let's get started. You might start off by saying something along the lines of Me gustaría presentarme. I would like to introduce myself. And then go on to talk about your name. Me llamo, whatever it is, me llamo Pedro, me llamo Luisa, me llamo Erin. So then you go on to talk about your age. Now you already know how to do this in Spanish. Tengo, whatever your age is, and años. For example, tengo 14 años. I'm 14 years old. However, let's make our sentence a little bit more complex. We've added what age we are. Let's then add in what age we're going to be. Say your birthday is in October. You would then say, tendré 15 años en octubre. I'll be 15 in October. Say you're not born in October, or say you're going to be 16 in October or November or whenever it is, you would then just change the number and the month depending on your information. And the last part of our first bullet point is where you live. Really simply, vivo en un pueblo que se llama Armadale. I live in a town called Armadale. Vivo en un pueblo que se llama Bathgate. Vivo en un pueblo que se llama Blackridge. Anything like that. And that's you ticked off your first bullet point. Let's move on to bullet point 2. Now, bullet point 2 is your education experience so far. So this is where you'll talk about what school you go to, what subjects you're doing, what subjects you're good at, what subjects you're maybe not so good at in Spanish. So let's start off by talking about what school we go to. En este momento, voy a un instituto que se llama Armadale Academy en Armadale, donde vivo. Now that simply means, at the moment, I go to Armadale Academy in Armadale, where I live. We'll then go on to talk about what school subjects you do. So you just add in estudio and then some of your subjects. Estudio las matemáticas, el inglés, el francés, el español, la historia, las ciencias. And remember, if there is a name of a particular school subject that you're not sure of, you do have access to your dictionary to check it. You might then continue that sentence by adding a little bit of detail on your opinion on these subjects. For example, porque son asignaturas muy útiles, because these are very important subjects. You might then make this a little bit more complicated by adding in the future tense. Voy a pasar mis exámenes en, and then some of the subjects that you're doing your exams in. Voy a pasar mis exámenes en las matemáticas, el inglés, el español. And then a concluding phrase saying maybe what you would like to get from the year. Espero sacar buenas notas en mis exámenes. I want to get good grades in my exams this year. Let's move on to our third bullet point. Our third bullet point is all about you. It's the skills and the qualities that you have which make you perfect for this job that you're applying for. Now remember, you might need to tailor what you write depending on the job. So for example, if you're talking about applying for a cajero or a cajera job, working in a supermarket as a cashier, for example, you'll need to say things such as you're sociable or you like working with others. Now, good for us, these are really similar in English as what they are in Spanish. Now, let's look at some of the qualities that we could use to describe ourselves. You might start off by saying something along the lines of creo que, pienso que, I think that, or I believe that, and then describe yourself. Soy sociable, soy motivado, motivada, soy organizado, organizada, soy responsable. Try and use adjectives which are quite similar to the English, as you can hear there, and that keeps things nice and easy for you. Remember to change your endings of the words depending on whether you are using the masculine endings or the feminine endings, and be sure to check your dictionary if you would like to include any other adjectives. You might want to then talk about the skills that you have for the job. For example, me encanta trabajar en equipo. I like to work as part of a team. You then might want to say something along the lines of me llevo bien con las personas de todas edades. I get on well with people of all ages. Now, depending on whether it is appropriate for the job, you might want to include what you do in your free time. For example, durante mi tiempo libre, in my free time, practico deportes. I do sports. Salgo con mis amigos. I go out with my friends. And you might finish off your third bullet point by saying something along the lines of, it appears to me as though my skills match what your company is looking for. So how do we say this in Spanish? Well, it's a very impressive phrase and it looks a little something like this. Mis habilidades parecen adecuarse a las exigencias de su compañía. Okay, we're almost done. Let's move on to our final bullet point 4, which is about your work experience. Remember, this needs to be related to the job that you're applying for. So try and keep it general so that it can be applied for lots of different jobs. Please also bear in mind this doesn't need to be true and you can make it up with some useful phrases. Let's look at some examples just now. Let's start it off with a really simple introductory phrase that we can apply to any job. I have experience working in this area. Tengo experiencia de trabajar en esta profesión. Now this is where you're going to need to insert your job that you're applying for into one of these sentences. So for example, you might say, I worked as a cashier in a supermarket, or I worked as a waiter in a restaurant, showing that you've got experience in this particular job. Now that's really easy to do in Spanish. You'd start off by saying, ya he trabajado, I have already worked, como, as, and then the job, cajero, cajera. Ya he trabajado como cajera en un supermercado. I've already worked as a sales assistant or a cashier in a supermarket. Ya he trabajado como camarero en un restaurante. I've already worked as a waiter in a restaurant. You then might want to explain what your work experience has given you and why it's relevant for this particular job. You might want to say something along the lines of, I helped people and I learned a lot. Ayudaba a la gente y aprendí mucho. Your final phrase might be a really hard-hitting phrase to show that you maybe worked under a high-pressure environment, and you can use this to apply that to another job. So how would you say, I worked in a high-pressure environment in Spanish, to finish off your final bullet point? He trabajado bajo presión en un ambiente de trabajo en equipo. So I know that is a quick tour of your first 4 bullet points, but hopefully it's given you a rough idea of the sorts of language that you can include. Now remember, you will have access to a dictionary, and while you're preparing your job application letter in class with your teacher, make sure you use your leaflets and your booklets that you've been given by your class teacher to help you, and use some of the language that's in this video. If you've got any questions, do not hesitate to ask. Buena suerte! Adiós!